Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. I'm your other host, Shorty, and today we are going to be looking at self-help. Probably wondering why I picked self-help. It's the name on it, Owen King. Well, down the fact that a couple of my customers pulled it, so I had a spare copy lying around, but mostly it was the name. It rang a bell for me. It took me a while to figure it out, and it's like, oh yeah, that writer, Stephen King. Brilliant writer, one of my favourites. I'm currently working my way through 2 individual books by him, that's which I like him. And I know he's got a kid who does writing, like he did some horror books and then did some comic books, some even got turned into a TV series. Joe Hill, yeah, Joe Hill's great. I love Joe Hill. He's got another kid, though, Owen King. He writes some stuff too. And I hate to say it, but that wasn't quite enough for me to jump on with him, because I'm actually a little bit aware of Owen King's stuff, but mostly I'm aware of who he is and the context of who he is. And some of this has put me off him. For a start, I've only really encountered a little bit of his stuff, and that was the Lost in the Tall Grass, or In the Tall Grass, which is a movie that I think he did with his dad. And I was like, yeah, it's fine, but it kind of feels like it's just more Stephen King, just slightly different. And Joe Hill never quite went that way. I think he went out his own way and did some stuff which, it's horror, it's going to have some kind of crossover there, but he also is responsible for fantastic, funny detective comic, and Owen King was just doing Stephen King kind of stuff. But more than that, it's the fact that he was Owen King. Joe Hill clearly wanted to do something without his parentage being completely over him. And don't get me wrong, I still think there's going to be huge amounts of nepotism there. But Owen King being Owen King and having worked with his dad on a number of things explicitly, I feel like that was something where I was going to brush off it a little bit. Throw into the mix the fact that I not only read a lot of horror and other things in general, I've got a lot of friends who read a lot of horror and other things in general, and nobody has ever put an Owen King book in my hand and said, you really need to read this. The same is not true of Joe Hill. People have put Joe Hill stuff in my hand. But I still want to read it. It's the 2 guys who put it on their pull list. I actually know them, or well, one of them I know really well. The other guy gets a lot of Marvel books, but they both have pretty good taste, and there's been some backwards and forwards on what we like, so I thought, yeah, okay, give it a go. And it turns out I do like it more than I thought I would. I'm not going to say it's blown my mind completely. I am not here to completely do a 180 and claim Owen King is the absolute legend of writing that his father is, but it impressed me in ways I wasn't expecting. First off, the artwork. Need to bring up the artist's name here. Jesse Kellerman. Now, not too familiar with them, but when I first started flicking through, I wasn't overly impressed. It's a not quite minimalist style, but it's still not very heavy on the detail. Very simple, basic line work. But the more I was reading it, the more I was enjoying what he was doing with the world. That simple way of doing characters, so they're not gone for photorealism, but they also aren't stylized. They exist in a very specific comic book visual language. There is really nice colouring, which brings to mind a very Californian kind of feel to it, which I really, really do enjoy. It's simple when it needs to be, but the more you look at it, the more you realise there's some depth to it. In terms of non-verbal communication, set pieces that are dropped into the background, and even just difference of shading, depending on what we're looking at. Altogether, impressed me more than I thought it would. And the same is true of Owen King's writing. It's kind of hard to put in a genre. For me, it's just a really cool character study, but it's wrapped in some trappings of, mystery or drama. But it is mostly a character study. And how it's done is brilliant, because this is issue 1, I've got 2 primary characters who we need to know an awful lot about for the rest of the story to make sense. But it's only the first issue, and we need to have some actual plot beats going on there. So he doesn't get to spend that long with each character. But what he does is really effective. I now know an awful lot about these people. I know about their motivations, their likes, their dislikes, their sense of humour, their empathy, their lack thereof. The way they interact with people tells an awful lot. The way they hold themselves, the way they sometimes remain silent or sometimes speak. All of this, small little individual beats and moments come together to give me ideas of who these people are and what I'm going to expect from this story. And it sounds like it's going to be a really good story as well, because in the middle of all that, we also get a couple of plot beats, some of which are instantly obvious, and they're going to lead into the actual final reveal in the last couple of pages, which, not a huge surprise. I did kind of see it coming, but it was still nice. It was approached in a really interesting way. But there's also some foreshadowing scattered around about who these people are outside of the plot that involves the 2 of them together. I'd like to think that this is subtle foreshadowing. It might not be. It might come back and just have turned out it was a brick wrapped in something. But it still was effective. I don't mind the fact that it's not a genre I usually like. I don't mind the fact that it's Owen King, who didn't even bother working out a nom de guerre and just went under his dad's surname. I don't mind the fact that the art wasn't mind-blowing, because in the end, everything that happened came together and told the story through the one thing I think every comic book issue 1 should be able to do, to grab my attention and make me want to come back for the next issue, and it's totally done that. I want to know what happens next, because his characters are fascinating. That's it for me for now, though. I do have more to review this week. Might be a bit of a quiet one, though. There's not a huge amount out to talk about, so I might just do a random 5-minute talk about something involving comic books down the line. If that's your bag, just make sure you do the social media thing so you don't miss out on anything. Until I see you again, though, look after each other, everyone. Stay safe. Bye!